Welcome back, folks. I'm Frizz, and today I'd like to take some time to talk about what actually makes a spell particularly good in Pathfinder 2e. Spell selection is one of the most important aspects of being a spellcaster in 2e, but it isn't always clear what actually makes a spell good or what types of spells are actually useful in combat. And yes, we are only going to be talking about what makes a spell good for combat in this video, because how much utility a spell provides is a much wider subject, and I don't have that kind of time. So let's get into it. Alright, so absolutely the most important part about playing a spellcaster in Pathfinder 2e is having a good selection of spells. Being able to pick the exact right spell for the given combat that you're in is what sets spellcasters apart from martials. And being able to pick and choose the right tool is really good. More than anything, what's important for a spellcaster is having a good spell repertoire, rather than just getting as many good spells as possible. As an example, if all of your spells are mental effects that target a creature's will save, then you're going to be in a pretty bad spot if you end up fighting a mindless enemy or someone who just has a really good will save. As an example, if the only offensive spell that you have prepared is something like Agitate, you're going to have a much harder time than if you have Agitate and Burning Hands. You're not that likely to actually know which saving throw is the best to target for an enemy, but having a variety of spells allows you to even attempt to target weakest saves, which, by the way, targeting weakest saves is very good. Another important part of spells that really shouldn't be overlooked is that a lot of spells have an effect even if the enemy succeeds on their saving throw, which is really big. If a martial character misses with a strike, they don't do anything and quote-unquote wasted the action because they didn't roll well. This can give spellcasters more consistency than martial characters in some regards. For example, if a couple of enemies are low on health, hitting them all by casting Grim Tendrils is more likely to put them down when you compare it to just someone trying to hit them with a strike. Yeah, you're probably not going to do all that much damage if someone succeeds on their save and they take half damage. But half damage is way better than 0 damage. That isn't to say that spells that only affect targets on a failure or if you hit them with an attack are bad. Instead, it just means that consistent spells that affect people even on a successful save are really good. That's a really important distinction to make. Basically, you can't count on creatures to critically fail on your saving throws all the time. But you can it is possible for you to still mess someone up even when they succeed on their saving throw, and that is incredibly good. Another important factor into making a spell good is how well it holds up with time. This is honestly one of the more important things to me personally. Some spells are good all the way from level 1 to level 20, but others just aren't. Having a low level spell that is still good once you can cast 7th level spells is amazing, since it means that you aren't strictly limited to a couple of high level spells before you start casting cantrips at people. Magic Weapon is amazing from levels 1 to 3 or 4, but once someone has a +1 striking weapon, it is no longer beneficial to them. So that is a fantastic spell for early on, but there are some spells that are good from level 1 to 20, so those are really nice to have. Just as an example, Command is a level 1 spell that can be crippling if you fail the saving throw, and it doesn't need to be heightened. It's just as scary when you get it as a level 1 wizard as when you're a level 10 wizard. It helps lighten the load on your high level spells, which you generally want to fill with either incapacitation effects or damaging effects, because for those to be really useful, they have to use high level spells. Something like Command doesn't. Another good example is True Strike, which just gives a huge boost to accuracy for your attack roll spells, and that never needs to be heightened to be useful. To round off this video a little bit, let's talk about my 2 favorite spells that I recommend to basically everyone who is able to cast them. In case you're making a spellcaster, then these spells are really good, and I guess they have the Frizz seal of approval in case that matters to you or something. Also, most spells that I've mentioned elsewhere in this video are also amazing and I highly recommend them. First off, let's talk about slow. It's often mentioned as one of, if not the best, debuff spells in the entire game for a really, really good reason. The target gets a fortitude save, and then depending on the result, they either get the slowed condition for a certain amount of time. They aren't affected on a critical success, obviously, but what makes this so good is that they're slowed for 1 round if they succeed. And this save doesn't have the incapacitation trait. So if you're fighting one high-level opponent and they succeed, you gain up 2 of your actions to take away 1 of theirs, and that's almost always worth it. If they fail or critically fail, then really the combat's almost over because they're either slowed 1 for a minute or slowed 2 for a minute. Basically, it stays amazing. Like, slow is good from level 5 when you get it to level 20, and if you want to heighten it to the 6th level, you can really screw over a lot of people. It's amazing. The second spell that I want to talk about that is absolutely fantastic is Dispel Magic. While Dispel Magic doesn't have some of the qualities that I've talked about elsewhere in this video, it's just so versatile. Just having the ability to get rid of magical effects is so useful since often those are pretty horrible. Like, this is also one of the only situations that I can think of off the top of my head where being a spontaneous spellcaster is actually better than being a prepared spellcaster, so long as Dispel Magic is one of your signature spells. And yeah, I can't recommend Dispel Magic as a signature spell enough. If someone casts a low-level spell that you recognize, especially if you have the Recognize Spell feat, then you can cast a Dispel Magic of a similar level to the spell that was cast, which basically invalidates enemy spellcasters who are casting buff or debuff spells. It's really good. Like, it isn't going to be useful in every situation, but being able to dispel the slow spell that someone just cast on your fighter is exceptionally good. So yeah, while this video is pretty rambly, I hope that I've gotten my points across. There's a lot that goes into deciding what spells are good to learn and have access to, but it's not so insane that making a single choice will ruin your character or anything. Long story short, grabbing versatile and consistent spells that can be useful without having to use up your high-level spell slots is the best way to build a fantastic spell repertoire or spellbook. Thanks for watching. This has been a fun video to put together since I normally don't actually play spellcasters, but I've played with a bunch of them, so I have seen a lot from every spell list. But if you've got any spell suggestions or advice for people choosing their spells, then I would like to hear down below, because again, I don't have a lot of personal experience with choosing spells. While you're down there, feel free to subscribe or join the channel as a member or something. Becoming a member is the best way to support me financially, and there are also some fun benefits involved. Regardless, until I see you next, live a wonderful life.